Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to enjoy your life and become who God created you to be. If you truly want a positive change in your life, don't just listen, take action. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you can receive more inspiring messages. Have you ever been in a room where someone tried to embarrass you and you smiled like nothing happened? That moment wasn't weakness, that was strength. That was maturity. That was spiritual warfare in silence. Let me tell you something right now. You are not obligated to attend every argument you're invited to. There is power, divine power, in acting like nothing bothered you. Not every reaction deserves your energy. Maturity doesn't always look like shouting, fighting, or demanding to be heard. Sometimes it looks like walking away with your head held high, even when everything inside you wants to scream. That's what emotional discipline looks like. It's not that you don't feel the pain. It's that you train your heart not to be led by it. You've learned to pause, breathe, and let wisdom catch up before you let words fly. That's not weakness. That's strength under control. Emotional discipline means you've stopped living on the edge of your emotions. It means you've learned to master the moments where your flesh wants revenge, but your spirit calls for peace. You stop allowing other people's chaos to dictate your calm. The truth is, most of us are carrying unhealed wounds that want to speak up every time we're triggered. But when we react out of that brokenness, we usually end up creating more damage than healing. Emotional discipline says, I don't have to respond just because I'm offended. I don't have to raise my voice to prove I'm strong. I don't need to make a scene just because I'm uncomfortable. There's power in training yourself to pause when provoked. Because in that pause, grace enters. In that pause, the Holy Spirit whispers, you don't have to go there. And if you're sensitive to that whisper, you'll find yourself walking away from situations that would have once pulled you into days or even weeks of drama. It takes strength to bite your tongue when you know you could crush someone with your word. It takes strength to choose mercy over anger. But that strength doesn't come from your personality. It comes from a surrendered heart. Some people think emotional discipline means you're suppressing how you feel. No, it's acknowledging your feelings, but refusing to be governed by them. It's recognizing, yes, this hurt me. Yes, I feel disrespected. Yes, I want to react. But then saying, I'm going to bring this feeling to God before I bring it to people. Because the truth is, feelings are real, but they're not always facts. And if you build your behavior on your emotions, you'll keep rebuilding broken relationships, broken peace, and broken self-worth. When you have emotional discipline, you don't let other people's behavior dictate your behavior. You stay rooted. You stay grounded. You choose to reflect your values, not their volume. You decide, I will not stoop. I will not swing. I will not break character just to prove a point. Because the moment you let them pull you into their emotional storm, you've handed over your peace, your power, and your position. Emotional discipline is knowing that just because I'm capable of responding doesn't mean I'm called to. Silence has a power that most people underestimate. In a world that celebrates loud voices, instant replies, and public confrontations, choosing silence can feel like defeat. But it's not. Silence is often the most powerful weapon you have. It takes wisdom to know when to speak and when to stay quiet. Anybody can talk, argue, or shout back, but it takes real strength to be still when everything in you wants to rise up and respond. When you remain silent, you give God space to work. You allow room for grace, reflection, and peace to do what anger never could. There are times in life when your silence is not about ignoring the issue, it's about rising above it. It's a decision not to feed the chaos. It's saying, I refuse to get pulled into a conversation that leads nowhere. because not every battle is yours to fight, and not every opinion deserves your attention. Silence doesn't mean you agree. Silence doesn't mean you're afraid. Silence means you know your worth doesn't shrink when you don't explain yourself. It means you're so grounded in who you are that you don't need to convince anyone else. There are moments when God will tell you to be quiet so that he can be loud. When you speak, people hear you. But when you're silent, people start to hear themselves. And sometimes that's exactly what they need. Let them reflect. Let them wonder. Let them figure out their own noise without your voice joining it. Some arguments don't need your input. They need your absence. You don't need to win with words. You win with peace. And silence is often the sound of peace in motion. In relationships, in family, in leadership, silence is a form of wisdom. It gives space for emotions to settle. It stops the escalation. It protects your peace and keeps the door open for reconciliation. A well-timed silence can say more than 1,000 perfectly chosen words. Because silence can't be misquoted. Silence can't be twisted. Silence doesn't leave a trail that can be used against you. It simply stands calm, steady, secure. There are people who will try to provoke you just to get a reaction. They want to see you crack. They want to see you bleed emotionally. But when you stay silent, you frustrate every plan they had. You break their control. You refuse to dance to the tune of manipulation. Your silence becomes your resistance, your boundary, your declaration of strength. And in that space of quiet, something holy starts to happen. You begin to hear God more clearly. You become more aware of what's worth fighting for and what's not. In your silence, you are not powerless. You are present. You are observing. You are discerning. You are listening. And when it's finally time to speak, your words will carry weight because they weren't wasted on noise. They were stored in wisdom. Learning to let people be wrong about you is one of the most difficult yet liberating lessons you'll ever embrace. Our natural instinct is to defend ourselves, to explain, to correct every false perception or rumor. We want to be understood, especially by the people closest to us. But the truth is, not everyone is ready or willing to understand you. And some have already made up their minds about who they think you are. But no matter how clearly you explain yourself, they will twist your words, misread your silence, and misjudge your intentions. That's not your burden to carry. Letting people be wrong about you doesn't mean you're admitting guilt. It doesn't mean you're being passive. It means you're choosing peace over proving a point. It means you've come to a place in your growth where you no longer need to be right in the eyes of others to feel right within yourself. When your identity is rooted in something deeper than human approval, you stop chasing validation from those who refuse to see your heart. You realize that the opinions of others do not define your truth. And sometimes silence is the loudest statement you can make. Need to be understood is a form of attachment that can keep you emotionally hostage. The moment you release that need, you step into freedom. You stop trying to change minds that don't want to be changed. You stop rehearsing explanations that will never satisfy, and you start living from a place of rest, knowing that God sees all, knows all, and defends those who trust in him. People may not know your side of the story, but God does. And that's enough, because when he is your defender, you don't need to fight every battle. There will be times when people gossip about you, accuse you, or twist your past into a narrative that fits their own insecurity. Let them. There is no peace in constantly trying to correct people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Your energy is too precious to spend on convincing people who aren't listening. You're not responsible for their version of your life. You are only responsible for walking in integrity, staying true to your purpose, and keeping your heart clean. When you let people be wrong about you, you take back your power. You take back your peace. You stop carrying conversations in your head that were never going to end well. You stop overthinking every move, every word, every silence. You get to breathe. You get to rise above. And you get to focus on what truly matters. The opinions of others will always shift, but the truth remains constant. And you are not here to be liked. You are here to be faithful. Not everyone will celebrate your growth, and that's okay. Some will misunderstand your boundaries as attitude. Some will interpret your silence as guilt. Some will assume your peace is pride. Let them. Your journey isn't meant to be understood by everyone. It's meant to be lived boldly and unapologetically, even when misunderstood. Healing isn't just a feeling. It's a transformation. And one of the clearest signs that you're truly healing is not in how you talk about your past, but in how you respond to your present. The way you handle offense, disappointment, and confrontation reveals more about your healing than your words ever could. You used to explode when triggered. Now you take a breath. You used to chase after apologies. Now you offer forgiveness freely. That's what growth looks like. That's what healing sounds like. It's quieter, calmer, wiser. You know you're healing when the same situation that once shattered you now barely shakes you. The same tone that once made you cry now makes you pray. The same people who once controlled your emotions now no longer have access to your peace. You've learned to detach from chaos, not because you don't care, but because you finally realize that protecting your peace is your responsibility. Healing is not about pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about refusing to let that pain run your life anymore. And nothing proves that more than your responses. It was a time when you needed closure, needed explanations, needed justice. But healing teaches you that you don't need answers to move forward. You just need intention. You just need to choose not to bleed on people who didn't cut you. That choice, made over and over again, builds emotional strength. It builds spiritual maturity. It builds resilience. And resilience doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. I'm not going to respond the way I used to. I'm grown. Some people think healing is this grand emotional breakthrough. And yes, sometimes it is. But more often it's found in the small decisions you make daily. The decision not to argue back. The decision to delete the message instead of sending it. The decision to walk away rather than get the last word. Every time you choose peace over pride, you heal a little more. Every time you choose grace over anger, you become stronger. And that strength shows up in your responses. Healing is a process, not a performance. You're not trying to impress anyone with how unbothered you are. You're simply refusing to be dragged back into the same cycles you worked so hard to escape. You may still feel the emotions, but they no longer control your reactions. You no longer serve your pain. You've outgrown it. And while others may not see the battle happening inside of you when you choose to respond differently, heaven does. God sees the effort. He sees the pause. He sees the restraint. And he honors that. You may not have received the apology you deserved. You may never get the acknowledgement you crave. But healing allows you to respond as if you did. It allows you to extend the very grace you never received. Because you're not reacting from a place of wounds anymore, you're responding from a place of wisdom. And that is a victory no one can take from you. There's always a choice in how you respond to the storms around you. You can rise above it or sink below it. Every word spoken against you, every unfair treatment, every betrayal is an invitation to elevate or to retaliate. Rising above doesn't mean you're blind to what happened. It means you've chosen not to let what happened reduce you. It means you've set your eyes higher than the insult, the offense, the misunderstanding. It's not denial, it's discipline. It's deciding that your peace is too precious to be sacrificed on the altar of someone else's dysfunction. When you rise above, you don't just protect your peace, you protect your purpose. You're not here to fight every battle that calls your name. Some battles are distractions dressed up as duty. They want to drain you, delay you, and distract you from what really matters. And the moment you engage with everything thrown your way, you're no longer led by vision, you're led by reaction. Rising above is refusing to sink into the emotional pit someone else dug with their word. It's recognizing that just because someone is operating from a place of pain doesn't mean you need to meet them there. There's a strength that comes from choosing dignity over drama. You won't always be able to control what people say or do to you, but you can always choose how you respond. And that response will either lift you or limit you. There's power in holding your peace, power in choosing to be the bigger person, not out of pride, but out of purpose. Because you've come too far to be pulled down by petty arguments or toxic cycles. When your vision is high, your tolerance for nonsense becomes low. Not because you think you're better, but because you know where you're going. You've been through too much to keep circling the same emotional wilderness. The enemy would love for you to keep reacting, keep clapping back, keep defending yourself, but what if the most powerful clapback is your silence? Your growth, your refusal to shrink to their level. You're not who you used to be. You're not fighting the same way. Your armor looks different now. It's peace, wisdom, patience, and restraint. And those weapons are far more powerful than anger ever was. People may not understand your silence. They may mistake your grace for weakness. Let them. They don't see the battles you've already overcome. They don't know the nights you've cried, the prayers you've prayed, or the healing you've walked through. They only see the fruit, but they don't know the root. So let them talk. Let them assume. You're not rising to prove them wrong. You're rising because staying low no longer fits you. You're not called to respond to every fire. They're trying to smoke you out of your peace. You're not obligated to answer every insult. They're baiting you to lose focus. But when you rise above, you rob the chaos of its power. You take control not by reacting, but by staying anchored. And in that space you find freedom. In that space you soar. There's a quiet strength in choosing what to give your attention to. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every insult warrants your energy. What you ignore loses its power over you. Ignoring isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's spiritual maturity. It's understanding that if you stop feeding something, it eventually starves. The more you ignore what's trying to trigger you, the more control you take back. Because the things that used to shake you can't break you anymore when you no longer give them space in your mind, your heart, or your mouth. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to answer every accusation. Sometimes the greatest proof of growth is not in what you say, but in what you refuse to acknowledge. When you've healed, your silence is not passive. It's powerful. It's a declaration that says, I don't need to defend myself to be at peace with myself. The enemy wants you exhausted, distracted, pulled into drama and dysfunction. But when you choose to ignore it, you stay focused. You stay free. You stay in alignment with your purpose instead of being tangled in petty battles that drain your joy. Some people thrive on chaos. They want to provoke you because your reaction feeds their control. The moment you stop reacting, they lose their grip. And you regain your authority. You start living from a place of peace, not pressure. Ignoring doesn't mean you don't feel the sting. It means you've chosen not to let the sting set the tone. It means you've decided to respond to the voice of truth instead of the voice of torment. You know who you are. And because of that, you don't need to chase every false story or every opinion meant to wound you. There's freedom in saying, I see it, but I don't need to address it. You're not being blind, you're being wise. You're choosing not to pour fuel on a fire that doesn't deserve your oxygen. You're choosing not to lend your voice to a conversation that was never meant for your elevation. You're choosing not to entertain the noise because you've realized that where you place your focus is where your strength goes. And if you keep giving strength to what's trying to destroy your peace, you'll never have the clarity to build what God is calling you to build. You weren't created to live under the control of opinions, judgments, and projections. You were created to walk in authority with your eyes fixed forward. You weren't designed to explain yourself to everyone who doesn't get you. You were designed to rise, to lead, to love, and to grow. And growth often requires you to ignore what used to consume you. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to prove every point. You just have to keep moving, keep trusting, and keep ignoring the things that want to pull you back to who you used to be. Because what you ignore can't control you, and what can't control you can't stop you. Now, it was never about pretending that nothing hurt. It was about learning that not everything deserves your reaction. The real strength isn't in how loud you can be, but in how steady you can remain when everything around you tries to shake your spirit. The greatest evidence of your healing, your growth, and your maturity is how you choose to respond when tested. You don't need to explain yourself to people who've already made up their mind. You don't need to shrink to match the size of someone else's chaos. You don't owe your peace to anyone who didn't help you fight for it. What you ignore no longer has permission to control you. The power to rise above it, to remain anchored in truth, to walk with dignity in the face of misunderstanding, that's the quiet roar of someone who has been refined by fire and came out gold. You were never called to live beneath the weight of opinions or reactions. You were called to walk with purpose, clothed in grace, rooted in wisdom. And now, no matter what comes, you know how to act like nothing bothered you because you've mastered the art of being unshakable. If this message lifted your spirit, don't forget to like, share, and let someone else be encouraged today. Subscribe for more life-changing truths that keep your heart strong and your soul steady.